Yo, what's up, gamers? So, I'm in the break room trying to buy a bag of chips from the vending machine, and this thing asks me for $2. Fine, I put the money in, hit the button, and instead of chips, it drops a mystery box. I open it up, and inside is one napkin, a ketchup packet, and a note that says, "Congratulations, you have unlocked a sense of pride and accomplishment." And I'm standing there like, hold up, this reminds me of a game EA released. A game so controversial it went from angry Reddit threads to actual government attention. And it all started with loot boxes. So now I welcome you back to the Janitor Files, a series where we mop up the gaming's biggest messes. The hype, the greed, and the stories the industry would rather shove under the vending machine. So do me a favor, hit that like, subscribe, and drop a comment down below. What's the worst microtransaction system you've ever seen in a full price game? Because Star Wars Battlefront II wasn't just another Star Wars game. This was supposed to be the sequel that fixed everything fans complained about before. But the second players got their hands on it, everything went sideways. So let's grab a mop, we gotta clean up what happened with Star Wars Battlefront II. Before all the controversy, before the Reddit meltdown, before governments started asking questions, this should have been an easy win. It was Star Wars, one of the biggest franchises on the planet, with lightsabers, stormtroopers, space battles, Darth Vader breathing like he just found out the breakroom coffee machine is still broken, and EA had the license. A massive publisher with money, studios, and marketing machine to turn this into something huge. The 2015 Battlefront reboot looked incredible and sounded incredible. It nailed the Star Wars fantasy on the surface, but it had no single-player campaign, and I hated Season Pass that split the player base like someone took a lightsaber to the lobby. So when Battlefront 2 was announced, fans wanted more. More maps, more modes, more heroes, more eras. A campaign, a fuller Star Wars experience. This was supposed to fix everything, but behind the scenes, EA was shifting harder into live service games. After seeing how much money systems like FIFA Ultimate Team could make, they had a plan, and that plan is where everything started to go wrong. On paper, Star Wars Battlefront II sounded like exactly what fans wanted. This wasn't just one era of Star Wars, this was supposed to pull from everything: the prequels, the original trilogy, and the sequels. Clone troopers fighting battle droids, rebels fighting stormtroopers, heroes and villains from across the entire saga. And this time, there was finally a single-player campaign. You play as Iden Versio, an Imperial Special Forces commander, giving players a story from the Empire side after Return of the Jedi. That alone had fans curious. Then EA made the big promise. No paid season pass, no splitting the community with map packs, everything after launch was supposed to be free after you bought the game. And that sounded great, almost too great, because instead of charging players for maps, heroes, and future content, they charged something else, and that something was progression. Here's how the system worked. You played matches, earned credits, and used those credits to open loot crates. Inside those crates, star cards. Star cards weren't just little stickers, they changed how your character played. More damage, faster cooldowns, better abilities, stronger health regeneration, actual gameplay advantages. So the problem wasn't just that loot boxes existed, the problem was what was inside them. If another player had stronger star cards than you, they weren't just dressed cooler, they were stronger, and that turned every match into a question. Did this player outplay me, or did they just open better crates? Then you had the hero grind. Characters like Darth Vader and Luke Skywalker were locked behind massive credit costs. We're talking about 60,000 credits each. Players calculated it could take 40 to 60 hours of grinding just to unlock one major hero. One hero. In a Star Wars game where people already paid full price for. And if you didn't want to grind, you could buy crystals with the real money, open more crates, and get upgrades faster. So now the breakroom math starts smelling funny. You pay $60 for the game, then the game asks, would you like to spend more money so your blaster doesn't feel like it came from the clearance bin? You weren't grinding for cosmetics anymore, you were grinding for power. And that's why players got furious. This felt straight up pay to win. So during the October 2017 beta, people were already saying, wait, why does progression feel like a casino with blasters? The star cards felt too important, the grind felt too slow, and the whole thing started smelling like somebody spilled corporate sauce all over the Death Star plans. Early access hit on November 9th, and more players got their hands on it. That's when the frustration really boiled over. People started calculating exactly how long it would take to unlock Darth Vader, and how much real money it would cost to skip the grind. Every answer made the situation look worse. And then came the Reddit post. A player complained about spending money on crystals, only to realize heroes were still locked behind credits. EA responded with one of the most infamous comments in gaming history. The intent is to provide players with a sense of pride and accomplishment. Gamers heard that and went, absolutely not. That comment didn't calm anyone down. It became the most downvoted comment in Reddit history. Hundreds of thousands of downvotes. It turned into a meme overnight, and suddenly Battlefront II wasn't being talked about as the big Star Wars shooter anymore. It was being talked about as a loot box game. And this is where everything falls apart, because now, this wasn't just a game problem. This became a real-world issue. Once people started connecting loot boxes to gambling, lawmakers started paying attention. Belgium investigated the system and questioned whether randomized paid rewards should be treated like gambling. In Hawaii, however, lawmakers called out loot boxes directly, arguing that systems like this could target kids with gambling-style mechanics. Think about that. A Star Wars game went from, "Can I play as Darth Vader?" to, "Should governments regulate this?" That's a wild jump. And then Disney stepped in, because now this wasn't just EA's problem, this was attached to Star Wars, one of the most protected family brands on the planet. If the story around your Space Wizard franchise becomes, "Are loot boxes gambling for kids?" that's a corporate alarm bell loud enough to wake up Palpatine. So hours before the November 17th launch, EA pulled microtransactions from the game. The system that caused the entire meltdown, gone. But by then, the damage was already done. Once the game finally launched, the damage followed it through the door. Reviews weren't just talking about the maps, or the heroes, or how good the blasters sounded. They were talking about the progression system, the grind, the loot boxes, the fact that a full-price Star Wars game had almost launched with paid power baked into it. And that overshadowed everything else, because underneath all the controversy, there was actually a fun Star Wars shooter in there. The battles looked incredible, the sound design was ridiculous, the fantasy of running through blaster fire with Darth Maul turns the hallway into a blender. That part worked, but the conversation had already changed. Sales underperformed compared to what EA expected, player trust took a hit, and EA's reputation got dragged through the breakroom like someone spilled blue milk on the floor and blamed the intern. A Star Wars game almost destroyed before it even launched. But here's the part people forgot. Battlefront II didn't stay that way. After the backlash, EA and DICE had to rebuild the entire progression system, not just slap a tiny bandage on it. Before, loot crates were tied to power. Star cards came from random rewards. Progression felt like a slot machine wearing a stormtrooper helmet. After the March 2018 overhaul, microtransactions came back later, but only for cosmetics. Star cards became tied to gameplay progression and skill points. Heroes became way easier to unlock, and the game started rewarding people for actually playing, instead of making them feel like they needed to swipe a card just to keep up. They didn't just tweak it, they rebuilt the system. Over time, with free updates, new maps, and massive Clone Wars content, Battlefront II slowly became the game fans wanted in the first place. But even after all of that, this controversy never fully disappeared, because Battlefront II wasn't a bad game at its core. The shooting was fun, the Star Wars atmosphere was incredible, the heroes felt powerful, the battles looked like somebody dumped a toy box full of laser chaos directly into a movie scene. The problem wasn't the fantasy, the problem was the system wrapped around it. And that's the real lesson here. This is what happens when making money becomes more important than making the game fair. Because the second players feel like the grind exists to frustrate them into spending, you don't have progression anymore, you have a toll booth wearing a stormtrooper helmet. Well, that's all I got. I gotta bounce, because that vending machine still owes me a bag of chips, and apparently I need to grind $40 more before it unlocks Doritos. But before I go, do me a favor, hit that like button, subscribe for more Janitor files, and turn on notifications so you don't miss the next mess we gotta mop up. Now, drop a comment down below, what do you think? Was the Battlefront 2 backlash blown out of proportion, or did the EA cross a line? And be honest, what's the worst microtransaction system you've ever seen in a full-price game? This is Scruffy the Janitor signing off. Peace out.